imagine.
So let's sort of start at the beginning. We've just met a few minutes ago, and you were,
I'm Sarah Huemmert.
okay,
Yeah.
and
Don Stewart.
Don Stewart, and maybe speak up. But okay, good. And we met through my interest in A Course in Miracles. I recently came to Edmonton from Prince George. There was a small study group there that folded quite a while ago, but I wanted to sort of start to meet some people that were involved in the course, and your name came up, and so I managed to contact you. So tell me about your involvement in the course, and how long have you been studying it, and how did you first discover it?
Oh my goodness, that is a long story. But I'll try to make it fairly brief. I was in management in the government of Alberta, senior management position, and somebody by the name of Huemmert came to Edmonton, and he started speaking to managers at a conference, and speaking about things that I kind of got the sense that it was had kind of a spiritual basis without really using those words. He talked about doing research in remote viewing, in cancer remission, in mind training, you know, things that I thought, oh, this is so interesting, I must spend some time and meet him, which I did. And he gave me a one-page description of an experience that Helen Schuckman had on the subway, where everything turned to love, and where she felt initially threatened. All of a sudden she saw that these young men saw the Christ in them. I read the one page. He told me that if I ordered this book called A Course in Miracles and did 15 minutes a day for 1 year, my life would never be the same. Well, I guess at some deep level that frightened me, so I never ordered the books. I put this one little sheet in my desk at the office, didn't order the books, but told my friend about it. And I think it was 2, maybe 3 years, the publisher for the course came to Edmonton to give a lecture on the course. And
The publisher is in the Foundation for Inner Peace?
yeah, his name was Claude, I can't remember his last name, but he was the initial publisher.
Goldberg.
No, he was Jewish, yeah. I've got it written in my course book, which I've got packed away now.
Yeah.
So he gave a lecture that the first question he asked is, who brought you here? And I said, my friend Glenda. He said, no, Jesus brought you. And I thought, yeah, right. And the next thing he talked about was that he prayed to lose 22 pounds and Jesus took his leg. And I go, this is too weird. And then the next thing he said, we went out for dinner, and he said, well, we're not really here, you know, this is all a dream. The world isn't real, this is all illusion. And again my mind went, you know, this is not resonating at all.
Yeah.
But there was one story he told that did resonate a lot, which was he had a little liquor store in New York,
Yeah.
on a little corner liquor store, and one day somebody came in to rob him, and he had a gun. Oh, prior to that, Claude had armed himself with a gun because he thought that this would be a dangerous mission for him to have a little liquor store. So he had a gun, and of course he was attacked because he was in defense mode. And so the first thing that happened is somebody came in and told him to give him money. And instead of using that gun, what he did instead was he said, how can I help you? You know, obviously you're in difficulty, what can I do for you? That story touched me, and that is the course right there.
Yeah.
To give and receive are one in truth. And in my defenselessness, my safety lies, and reaching out to your brother. And that resonated with my heart. So that was one thing that he said that resonated. And then I picked up a little book, and it was Journey Without Distance by Judith Scutch.
Nice.
And her husband, and she talked about how the course came to be, and that it was channeled by Helen Schuckman. And I thought, oh wow, I was so into channeled material that I was impressed by that.
Yeah.
And I then bought the books right away.
Right.
And once I opened that book about 34 years ago, 36 years ago, I don't know, I never put it down.
Yeah.
Even though initially all of the language was off-putting to me,
Yeah.
but I somehow had to keep going.
Yeah.
It was like, this is the key, this is the answer I've been praying for. There was in my life at that time just a feeling like all the success I had in the world, and I did have success, didn't give me anything I really wanted.
Yeah.
I wanted more.
So how long between the time that this person said that this would change your life and that you finally got the Course in Miracles?
I think maybe a year or two, I really don't know.
Yeah.
All I know is there wasn't immediate, yes, I'm ordering it.
Yes.
Even though he told me it would change my life.
Right.
Subconsciously, I'm sure there was something that frightened the ego.
Yeah.
Knew that this was the beginning of its undoing.
Right.
And so there was this resistance. But there was also this invitation and this compulsion that if there was going to be an answer, and if this was it, because I liked what Willis Harman had to say,
Yeah.
then okay, let's do this. By the way, the Stanford Research Institute that Willis Harman was the director of, it was set up by Edgar Mitchell, because Edgar Mitchell, coming back from the moon, the astronaut,
Oh, yes.
he had an epiphany that was the deep question in his mind, there must be more, and I want to understand more.
Yeah.
And that's where he set up the Stanford Research Institute. So those were my beginnings with the Course, and I didn't understand it. I just thought, well, Willis Harman said to me, do 15 minutes a day, do the lessons.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't even read the text.
That's interesting because I started the other way. I started to read the Course through a woman I met a few years ago who actually took me up to Prince George. But I started to read it, and I loved the text and how beautiful it was and everything else. But I thought I was an intellectual person, and therefore I didn't need to do the lessons. So when I finally started the lessons, of course, they're every bit as beautiful as the text.
Right,
So that's
and
very
they do
interesting.
make the shift. The shift happens through the lessons. And I was doing the lessons, but I didn't understand them.
Yeah.
But somehow, you know, I did what the lesson said. If it said, you know, look around your boardroom, when I was in a boardroom, and I would bless everybody in the room. I'd look around and I'd extend a blessing. And somebody would just look at me and make eye contact and smile, and I'd think, oh, okay. So Jesus finds his way to us reinforces every small step we take and every little moment of willingness. And I just saw people shifting their response to me in ways that were curious, and I thought, wow, that's interesting. This is somehow working something on me. But I was so naive about it, I didn't understand. I truly didn't understand. And so the next step was doing it in the limited way I knew how to do it, until one day I thought that I would, you know, go to a retreat on forgiveness that I heard about through the Circle of Atonement.
Okay, and I'm not sure if is that an organization, a Circle of Atonement? Then?
Yes, in Sedona, Arizona.
Okay, and it's course-based then, is it?
Course-based forgiveness. Robert's an incredible teacher of A Course in Miracles,
Yeah.
very, very dedicated to it. So I went to this retreat, I went to this workshop, and one of the things that I remember saying at the end of the workshop, well, first of all, I didn't even understand what people were talking about. They were all asking questions that were so deep, and I didn't understand them.
Yes.
You got to remember, I hadn't even read the text. And at the very end of the workshop, they called on whoever had the last question. There were 2 of us. And he turned to me and said, yes, you had a question? And I said, you know what, I don't have a question, but I just want to say that I just so honor what you're doing and how you present the information, how powerful it has been for me. And he got tears in his eyes. He's kind of a shut down intellectual type, and he got all teary. And I came home and I opened up the text, and it says, the highest compliment one brother can give to another is honor. And I thought, I've never used that word before. Where did that come from? So again, these little things made a difference to my life, and I remember them so vividly, these little shifts that were made. Then I came home from Sedona, and I thought, you know, I didn't have anybody here to really talk to.
Yeah.
There's a whole backstory of my relationship with my husband and some of the challenges in my relationship, and so much learning that was going on and so much healing in the relationship. No, this was my husband who died, and prior to his death there was a lot of healing. But I won't even go into that story right now because it's quite involved, and it's all about undoing specialness and special relationships and all that healing that went on there, and ultimately his death.
Yeah.
And I mean, I could write a book about all of that, but I'll just go on to the next step in my journey with the Course, which was the realizing that I really needed somebody to talk to. And so I reached out to the Community Miracle Center, who said that they're in California, and they said that they were connecting people with pen pals at that time. You know, it was by internet, but it was sort of like, who do you want to talk to? And they would just randomly send you 2 different names. So they sent me 2 names, and one of them was setting up a chat room, and I thought, I don't want to go into a chat room. I'd tried those before and I didn't like them, because it was difficult to manage, and you know, it wasn't as smooth as we have now on Zoom. The other option was to talk to somebody who was in Denmark. And I thought, well, that's safe. I don't have to get too involved with somebody.
A lot of water
in
between the 2 of you.
And there were 2 men. That's why I was maintaining it was safe, because I was widowed at that time. So when I started to connect with this fellow in Denmark, it turned out that he was translating the Course into Danish.
Wow.
And so he was working with Ken Wapnick, who I wasn't following at the time. I was very involved with Robert Perry.
Okay.
And I knew that Robert Perry and Ken Wapnick had a slightly different orientation to the Course. They had some significant differences.
Now, Ken was one of the original people involved in the Course, correct?
With Helen Schuckman. He was a friend of Helen Schuckman's and Bill Thetford.
Okay.
And so when Carl came over he said, oh, I have to come to North America, I have to come to meet with Ken Wapnick. Can we meet? That was after we'd been corresponding for a while. He's a psychologist, and he was doing the translation. And I was very impressed with that combination of being a psychologist and really into the psychological healing, which is a big part of the Course.
Right.
And also with the fact that he knew the text so well, because you can't not know and study the text intimately if you're going to translate it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So when he was coming to see Ken, he said, can I meet you?
And how many years ago would that have been, approximately?
That was about 23 years ago. We've known each other 21. I was in Sedona in between there. Let's say about 23 years ago.
So you'd been studying the Course you'd been introduced to the course, should we say about 10 years before that?
Yeah,
Okay,
at least.
just trying to
Yeah,
get some
and doing it on my own.
milestones, some marks.
Yeah, doing it on my own, going to some healing workshops with somebody else, Chuck Spezzano on the psychology of vision, also a course person, but that was more deeply psychologically oriented, opening up the heart and learning who you are emotionally, and then going to the forgiveness workshop with Robert, and I think there was one other with Robert in between, but I don't remember. Anyway, then I met Carl.
Yeah.
And I said to him, you know, this course is so loving and so beautiful, and I feel God's love. And he said, but the work is about undoing the ego, Sarah. It's not just, you know, about the love. What course are you reading? This course is about undoing the ego. It's about looking at your darkness. And I said, no, it's about feeling the love. I feel God's love. I feel like I'm so supported and so loved. And he said, well, that's not the course I read. The course I read.
Who said that again?
Carl, the guy from
Denmark?
Denmark.
Okay.
So he said, let's use our time together for a workshop. And so he was constantly confronting my ego. I didn't like it very much.
Most egos don't.
And then he said to me, you know, you're trying to do all this alone, because by that time I was widowed.
Yeah.
He said, you're trying to do all this alone. This isn't a journey to take alone. You've got to be with people. You've got to be with a group.
Really?
That's his view.
It's interesting because that's one thing that I sort of get from the course is that it is designed a lot for individual study. It's not that you need to or have to be in a group. Certainly it can be, but it's there for the individual to study on their own.
You've got to appreciate that I've done this for more than 10 years on my own.
Yeah, well, I'm about the same.
Yeah. So, but I took his challenge because it was like the Holy Spirit speaking through him, because our Holy Spirit speaks through our brothers and sisters, right?
Yeah.
And if we can't hear him directly through ourselves, sometimes we need somebody like that to say, challenge us a little bit. He did that with me. I go, okay. Then I heard that Robert Perry was having a one-year study of the course. And so I decided I would go there and study with Robert. So meanwhile, I went to a conference in San Francisco, a course conference. I met somebody from Sedona. He says, you know what, Sarah? I have a friend in Sedona, and she's widowed. You two would really get along, and I think you could go and live with her. So I did just that. I went to Sedona.
So you were retired at this point in time, or?
I was retired just prior to that.
Okay.
I was 55 years old when I retired from government.
Okay.
My boss at the time was scared for me. He said, what kind of a thing are you getting yourself into here, Sarah? Is this Christian? What are you doing? So I had to reassure him that I was safe. He was a good friend.
Yeah.
And he was one of the ministers in the government. He was a high-profile guy. He was Minister of Labor at the time. He had been my boss, and he was very concerned. So I had to assure him that I was in good hands. So I went to Sedona, spent the year there.
And this would have been how long ago now?
The year 2000.
2000.
That I remember. I don't remember dates well, but I remember this was the year 2000.
Okay.
Y2K,
Yeah.
things are going to change.
Yeah.
This was what Robert wanted to do.
Yeah.
So that was a very, very good immersion into the course, into meditation, into spending time in deep silence.
So did you live separately, or you actually lived together as a group and studied?
I lived with my friend who was widowed.
Yeah.
And other people lived in their own homes.
Yeah.
And
you met how often did you meet then?
Every day, morning and night.
Really?
Yeah. And it was a small group. There were only about 8 people in the group. So it was very intimate, it was very deep and very profound. And then I came back to my home here, and it felt so much like a gilded cage. You could see the size of this home, even though everything's moved out now.
Yeah.
It felt not home anymore.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be here, so I put my house up for sale. I was going to go homeless. And I met Don, and somehow he was brought into my life in a way that was like, just showed up. He didn't have a home. He'd been with a gal who they separated. So he was kind of back and forth to his parents' house because he was living with her. So before I knew it, it was like he was staying over, staying the night, and I thought, wow, this is such an immediate, instant relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Now what am I going to do?
Yeah.
Move on or check out why he's in my life?
Now, were you involved in the course at that point in time at all, or not?
Not at all. I had bought, excuse me, the course tapes for my second wife
Oh, yes.
as a birthday present, and listened to maybe the first 2, and this was just, I was going to be a Catholic priest at one time.
Sorry?
I was going to be a Catholic priest at one time.
Really?
Had intentions.
Okay.
So I had a very strong search ethic, if you will. A search, just a searcher.
Yeah.
A spiritual searcher.
Right.
But I just couldn't connect
Yeah.
with this. And I knew there was something there, and that was that. She came back from Sedona and started talking a little bit about the course. I said, you know, I really want to, something is not clicking in my life relationship-wise, so I really would like to learn more about it.
So what happened is I took the house off the market
Okay.
because it was like sell the house or explore what he was offering.
Yeah. And that
So
was
we
how
took
long
the-
ago approximately?
21 years ago.
Okay. Okay.
21 years ago we got
Okay.
together.
All right.
Because it was the year 2000 that I came back.
Okay.
This was 2001
Right.
that we met. And then I wanted to leave Edmonton because I really thought Edmonton had nothing spiritual going on.
Okay.
But what happened was that he wanted to learn the course. He says, well, why don't we get a group together and why don't you start teaching it? So I looked in the manual for teachers, which says, because I said, no, I'm not ready, but I looked in the manual and came to a page that said, don't lean on your own readiness, lean on mine. So the message for me was, if you lean on my readiness, you can teach this course. So I said, okay. So I went to Unity Church and I stood up in church one day and said, I'll start, if anybody wants to join us, we are going to have a group here in Edmonton in our home. Well, it just grew like a mushroom. I never have had a web page. I never have put up a poster to describe what we do or invite people. We registered with the Miracle Distribution Center. They had a list of people, places, and I did register there that if anybody was in Edmonton and wanted to call, we'd have a group on Monday and Wednesday, I think. Monday and Wednesday initially. So pretty soon we had a community of 100 people in Edmonton. I couldn't believe it.
Mm.
But I had a mailing list that was huge.
Mm-hmm.
And people were coming here and I thought, wow, the Holy Spirit really set this house up beautifully. You know, when you came here...
So it's a big house, but you had 100 people in here?
We had 50 people, as many as 50 people. That was the maximum we had in our home for retreats, for events, for potlucks, for Christmas gatherings, for you name it, we did it all.
Oh.
So it became more of a communal activity than just a course group.
Right.
And I can tell you that that family we established, that beautiful Course in Miracles family that we established 21 years ago, people were always welcome. Different people came and if they needed a home, they would live here for a time with us. And we had people from various teachers. Robert Perry, I invited him to come here from Sedona. He came for sessions. John Mundy came here. Gary Renard came here, who wrote Disappearance of the Universe. David Hoffmeister came here, and on and on and on. So many people came. And so the home became given over to Holy Spirit for his use. And it's been beautiful. And I said just before you started this interview that I was feeling very emotional and had a lot of tears. Because COVID brought everything to a close, and the house was no longer used for his purposes.
So how do you react to COVID, looking at the Course and what it teaches?
Well, it was a gift in the end. And I'm not answering your question exactly, but I'll just tell you why it was a gift. Because the next thing we did went on Zoom. And I think I sent you all the Zoom links and all the activities.
Yeah.
Now we have people from all over the world joining us on Zoom. And the group said to me, Sarah, when Zoom is over, will you open your house? Can we continue to have meetings here? I said, I don't think that's ever going to happen. Because how are we going to drop all of our friends we've connected with on Zoom? It's been a gift.
Yeah.
It's different, for sure.
Yeah.
There's things that we miss in terms of the camaraderie of joining regularly with social activities as well as group activities with the Course.
Yeah.
But it's also gone very deep and very beautiful. So that's been a gift of COVID. How I see COVID from a Course perspective, I don't know what it's for us. I know that, I don't even know how to answer that question, really. All I know is that
Well, I guess
there's a big reset going on in the world, and
it's certainly been a group decision, I would say, right? Like everybody that's been here and been impacted and part of this experience has chosen to be here, right?
yes.
And we've chosen to experience a pandemic together.
Yes. We're not victims, if that's another way of saying.
Sorry?
We're not a victim.
No, exactly. And then of course, you have the Course teaching that no one is a victim, that everything you experience is your own choice and generated out of your own mind.
Right.
And that goes with illness too, right?
Exactly.
But that it's, as the Course says, sickness is a defense against the truth.
This is a big defense.
So just to have this whole group experience like this is something quite interesting.
I'll mention one other thing that is important in this whole journey for me, that's important to say, I think, and that is as a way of learning more about the Course, I started to write my understanding of the lessons.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't just my understanding. I tried to decipher what Ken Wapnick was saying about the lesson. I tried to understand what Robert Perry was saying. I knew there were differences, and then I gave my own voice to what I understood from each of the lessons. And that's where some of this group on Zoom has come together, because I have a big following of people who read my commentaries on the lesson. And again, the commentaries go out through the Course in Miracles Society, CIMS for short, CIMS. And so it's been wonderful because they do all the work of putting it out and advertising it and doing all of it. I just have written the commentaries over the years. And now there's been a big request to put the commentaries on audio. And I was about to start doing that when we decided to sell the house, and that may or may not be the next part of this journey, is to actually record them all.
So have you actually written a commentary on almost every lesson?
On every lesson.
Every lesson?
Every
Oh,
lesson.
wow,
Every lesson, 4 to 5 pages per lesson.
wow.
365 commentaries, so you can imagine the size of this document if it was to be ever printed. It would
Wow.
have to be probably in 3 or 4 volumes.
So why the decision to sell and what's next for you?
The decision to sell was the same decision that was made 21 years ago for a different reason. The house is no longer being used for the purpose of the Holy Spirit.
Okay.
So the two of us are in this house together with no function except to get online. We can do that from anywhere.
Yeah,
We're both, Dawn's 80, I'll be 79.
yeah,
So we're kind of going like, are we going to just live out the rest of our lives here with just being on the computer with the Zoom group? And it just felt that it was time to move on, that Edmonton had served its function.
mm-hmm. So where are you off to next?
My son has a ranch, acreage, 15 acres of land. We're going to stay there temporarily, and we'll regroup and look around there and look at whether we'll build on his property, whether we'll look at something else, whether we'll house it, whether we'll rent for a while.
All right.
So we're like, right now, no fixed address and we're homeless. So that's the long and short of this long journey
Mm.
without distance.